In the early 1800s, the American frontier was one of the most dangerous places on Earth. No roads, no towns, and no second chances. But in that vast wilderness, one man endured something few ever have: a brutal animal attack, abandonment by his team, and a journey of survival that defied all odds. Born around 1783, likely in Pennsylvania, he worked as a fur trapper, one of the thousands risking their lives to collect animal pelts in the frontier lands. He may have sailed with pirates. He may have lived with the Pawnee people for years. The details of his early life are uncertain. But by 1823, one thing was clear. Glass was an experienced outdoorsman, and he'd signed up for one of the toughest expeditions of the decade. That summer, the expedition suffered a major setback. An ambush by the Arikara, a powerful and protective plains tribe. Several men were lost in the attack, and the survivors were forced to retreat. It was a sharp reminder that the frontier wasn't just untamed, it was contested land. After regrouping, Glass and his companions continued on foot through the wilderness, aiming to meet up with another group near the Yellowstone River. But that's when Hugh Glass, scouting ahead alone, had a fateful encounter. While moving through a remote thicket near the Grand River, Glass stumbled upon something few ever walk away from: a large grizzly bear and her cubs. The bear charged. The fight that followed left Glass severely injured. His leg was hurt, his back and shoulder were deeply wounded. He was barely conscious when his team found him. They bandaged his wounds as best they could and carried him on a stretcher for days. But progress was slow. The threat of another attack loomed, and the leader made a decision. He offered money to two men, John Fitzgerald and Jim Bridger, to stay behind with Glass until he passed, and then give him a proper burial. The rest moved on. Fitzgerald and Bridger waited, but days passed and Glass didn't die. He couldn't walk or speak clearly, but he clung to life. Eventually, fearing another attack from nearby tribes and convinced Glass would never recover, Fitzgerald decided they should leave. He took Glass's equipment, including his rifle and knife, and convinced young Bridger to follow him. They left Glass in a shallow grave and vanished into the woods. But Hugh Glass didn't die. Glass awoke, alone, badly injured, and without supplies, in the middle of one of the most dangerous regions in North America. He couldn't walk, so he crawled. He used river water to stay hydrated. He scavenged plants. He let nature take care of his injuries the only way it could. Every mile was a fight. He traveled across plains, through forests, and across rivers. When he found the remains of animals, he used what little he could to keep going. After weeks of crawling, he came across a group of Native Americans from the Lakota tribe. They took pity on him, cleaned his wounds, gave him food, and helped him recover just enough to continue. Eventually, after nearly 200 miles, Hugh Glass reached Fort Kiowa. He was barely alive, but his mind was clear, and one thing burned inside him. He had been left behind, and he was going to find the men who did it. Once he recovered enough to walk, Glass set off, not for safety, not for home, but for justice. He tracked down Jim Bridger first, just a teenager at the time of the incident. Glass saw the fear and regret in his eyes, and he let him go. But Fitzgerald was different, older, more calculating, the man who had taken his rifle and his hope. Glass followed his trail to a military outpost. By the time he arrived, Fitzgerald had joined the U.S. Army and was under government protection. Glass confronted him, but taking action would have meant punishment under the law. So instead, he gave Fitzgerald a warning, a clear, unforgettable message.